This conversation that we're going to have is more about than just money being financially free. It's about what are you doing with your time and your energy and your talent. Hey, Nick.
Scott, good to see you, my friend.
You too, man. Welcome back to another episode of Real Personal Finance.
Here we are. I'm excited what we're going to talk about today.
Me too. It's something that we chat about a lot with people who are nearing that path to retirement, especially in that tech and biotech space. So I think this is perfect for today. The question that we're gonna play with today is, can you quit your corporate job and still retire early? Yeah. So, we often hear stories about people walking away from the corporate job to pursue their passion projects or travel, or they start entrepreneurship. What does that mean for the average person, and how does that affect kind of the finances for them and when they get to have, work truly be optional? Leaving a high-paying job can really give you freedom, and there may be some trade-offs that happen along the way. So we just kind of want to dive into that a little bit today.
Absolutely. And I hear two things, right? A lot of times people hear retirement and they have maybe this misconception, or they have this idea of what retirement means. And it's, I'm walking away from my job. I'm never going to do anything else again. It's the last time you'll see me, right? Yep. And then I hear work optional. And I think those two go hand to hand. Like retirement can look whatever you dream it to be. And you could also do it in stages. And I think that's what we're really going to tease out today is like, hey, if we don't like our job, do we have to stay? And if not, let's start playing with the numbers and the options and seeing what's out there.
Agreed. And that actually kind of reminds me of my own little story for myself of building an entrepreneurial job, right? Having a little business and growing a business. So here we actually help families align their money with life. So if you need that help, feel free to reach out. You can always find us in the little comments below.
We're there.
But when we were starting this job, I started it from scratch, right? And my wife was working a corporate job so that she could support us while we were starting this business. And then as this business grew, it eventually got to the point where, well, she didn't have to work anymore and it was fully covering what we do. And now I'm by no means at the place where I'm ready to be financially free, that work is now optional. But we did build the business to such a place that we didn't have to choose to keep growing the business if we didn't want to.
That's a good spot to be in.
Which is another version of in entrepreneurship of kind of like work optional, because you kind of get like, well, I don't need to do it anymore, so I should just stop.
Totally. I mean, you're just defining freedom, right? And that's all 100%. It is. It's an exchange.
You're defining your version of freedom. But here's the issue for me. I became very ungrounded because I love helping people and I want to keep helping people. And so when I was automatically like, wait, I'm not supposed to keep moving the goalposts and make more money now. I'm supposed to be fine now. Don't try to do this anymore. Right. What I realized was this conversation that we're going to have is more about than just money being financially free. It's about what are you doing with your time and your energy and your talent.
I love that because we come across all the time in our practices, Scott, clients that are financially free, but when we look at freedom across other domains, they're not. And so if the numbers work, it's like, you don't have to stay there. That's not your only option. And so getting a chance to unpack, to your point of like, money is just simply this exchange of time, energy, and health. What does that look like? And how can we open up this conversation to say, hey, you don't have to stay here for another couple of years. Let's see what options are on the table.
Yeah. And so let's just define retiring early for a second, because I actually think it has multiple definitions. So
I do too.
Probably the most static, rigid definition is I'm supposed to retire when I'm 65 or 67 and I'm going to retire at 55. That's like maybe sometimes like the FIRE generation of like the financial independence, retire early. Right. It's like build up the assets so that I can be totally done off of this dollar amount that I want to have for the rest of my life. That's a very static version of retirement, right? Another might be that you want to leave corporate life so that you can go be a director at a nonprofit and just make a lot less money, but do work that you feel is much more like hits the heart for you than what you're doing in corporate life.
Absolutely.
Now, you might choose to leave to make less, but you're not going to fully stop working to reach retirement, but you're at a place where you can leave and let all the assets keep growing to be at retirement in the future.
Absolutely. Yep. And you don't have that drain or that suck coming out of the account because you're still technically working. And now, again, it's a trade-off, it's an exchange, so on and so forth. I've seen other clients who actually really like their job. They just don't like the hours. And they just say, hey, I want to do this on my own terms. I want to stay in my current role or some sort of limited capacity. I'm going to work to, continue to maintain health insurance benefits, but I'm going to do it on my terms. And now I'm just going to take a reduced, pay and I'm going to have my own schedule. Or, hey, I've got 30 years of experience. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but it's not going to be the scary like tech one that starts out of the garage. I'm just going to take a calculated bet on myself, go get some clients a day consultant and build my own schedule. So.
Yes. I think sometimes people hear entrepreneur and they think like, whoa, I don't want to be a business owner.
Right.
And instead it's like, well, hold on, Nick, like you've built a network of people in your industry for 30 years. If you were at the next conference were to just have chats with them over, beers and cocktail hours of, hey, I'm thinking about doing my own thing when I eventually leave corporate life. Would you have a need for this type of work?
Yeah.
And you just find out who needs the help? Well, you're essentially just being an employee of one, a consultant, which is not a hard business to run, but gives you lots of freedom.
So again, I keep hearing there's tons of options more than just putting in your notice, being in the fire community and going off grid forever.
Yeah, absolutely. But, people, you do, if you want to start thinking about it through this lens, I would think of it. Well, the other thing I would say just briefly, oftentimes people come in and they're like, I hate my job.
Mm-hmm.
And the immediate thing I think is like, why are you still there? Like there are so many opportunities to do things in this world. And money is a factor, of course, to the work that we're doing, but it's not the only factor. So helping you with like one part of our job, the fun of our job is getting a sense of, if you could create the perfect role for yourself, what would it actually look like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are you doing with your time? How much are you making? What are you doing? And then the question is that reasonable? Can you actually create that in your life? And if you can, how does that work with the financial structure that you already have? How does that change the outcome for you of when you're financially free?
Yeah, and when we have those conversations, a lot of times I'll get the response back, I never thought of it that way. Or it almost enters this conversation of like permission giving. Like, am I actually allowed to do that? Or that would be dangerous. And well, says who? Like, as long as the numbers work, and again, we're going to trust that works, but it goes back to this idea of like, is the ladder leaning up against the right wall?
Yes.
And if you're not living this ideal or fulfilled or meaningful life, why are you staying at this job? And so again, it's just permission granting. It's entering into that conversation and say, hey, let's just dip our toe into see if the numbers actually work. But let's actually start first with what do you actually want?
Yes. If we start with the life you want first, before we look at what are you going to do to get there, you'll get way better outcomes. This has happened on more than one occasion with clients. One of my clients specifically was in a bit of a change in her life. She's still working toward retirement in that pre-retiree section. And she was like, I love the corporate work. Marketing is what she does. I love that work, but I only want to do it with brands that I love. And I was like, amazing.
Yeah.
How about you just go make a list of all the brands that you love and then go see if any of them have opportunities. And within a couple of months, she had a job at an amazing firm that she wanted to be a part of.
It often reminds me of the, I'll probably butcher the quote, but just this idea or this notion of change is so difficult that we oftentimes remain stuck because the idea of changing is actually more uncomfortable than just remaining in what we currently have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But the cool thing is that the levers that we get to pull when we think about, do we retire early? If we make that corporate job, how do we make all this work? We're going to look at things like, once we know what you want to do, what's your income change going to be? So you're going to go from corporate life with maybe, some salary and bonus and RSUs and stock comp, all that fun stuff, maybe deferred compensation. And you're going to flip to whatever the new thing is. Maybe it's a new corporate job, so it doesn't change very much. Maybe you start a consulting role, so you need to ramp up. So we need to use assets to help you ramp up to live life. Maybe you have a bunch of corporate consulting gigs straight away, so you're full already. It's like it just gives you a chance to figure it out. Then we're going to look at things like savings rate. Like, do you still need to be saving? Oftentimes what we see is that when people hit their 50s, if they've been great savers to this point and they love the work they do, and they don't necessarily want to fully stop doing the work, maybe they want to keep doing it until they're in their mid 60s or 70s, we often find they can save a lot less than they actually thought they needed to still make work optional, because the assets that they already have on the balance sheet are going to grow.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it that way, or you're already living into a new budget by saving. Like, you're living off this, you're saving X. So if we just cut your salary, you're already living off that number. We just no longer saving. And to your point, if you've done a good job along the way, you probably don't even need to be saving any longer. You could slow down that pace. One thing that I commonly see is people begin the conversation of transitioning into retirement. They haven't run the numbers themselves and they have that really good job at corporate that they've been at for 20 plus years. We see lifestyle creep. And so this is where there's some friction of, hey, here's what your portfolio could support.
Yeah.
Here's what you're living on right now. And those are two really different numbers.
Yeah.
And again, which one, where's the trade-off? That's a big adjustment.
And it's not about, there's no judgment in that conversation. It's really just a conversation to help you understand what you could actually support if you left right now. Versus what you need. So you understand what the gap is. And then we have to look at how do we fill that gap. And one of the ways of filling that gap is going like, yeah, I don't need to spend nearly as much as I spend now. I don't really need any of this. Well, cool. Like, that's easy. Or I really love everything that I'm doing now. And I want to fill that gap, like with income. So yeah, both work. And then we can, of course, look at investment strategies and look at all the benefits trade-offs.
Right.
One of the biggest things of leaving corporate life, if one person is in corporate life, is that the biggest change that will happen more often than not, well, really two, but one is the biggest. The biggest is that health insurance will skyrocket for you as a family. Because the corporation's paying for a great deal of your benefits. And then, you lose things like 401k matches and things like that, but we just bake it in to like, here's technically what you're losing. But then we also get to balance that out with what are you gaining by making this change?
Yeah, that's a good perspective. I think too many times we look at, the glass half empty, right? What are we losing? Oh man, health insurance is going to be so expensive. Or look at all these great benefits. I got accustomed to this, but it's like, oh, what if we just flip that and look at all the freedom? And again, it's a trade-off, right? Yeah. And there's alternatives for all of these things. We can go find on the open network a health insurance plan.
Right.
Now we get to build our own schedule. We get to have that freedom. And again, it's just a conversation that we're opening up into freedom and a trade-off.
Yeah. There's kind of a few different scenarios that we've seen over the years. One that I helped a client with, a family with, was that the family was in a services business where they were in a corporate role making, like 7 figures a year. But the dad was never home. And he wanted to be present for his kids. So he moved to the public sector, actually. And he reduced his compensation dramatically by like over 70% to do this. But we looked at, to your point, we looked at like, hey, here's the life you guys are living now. Here's the guardrails you're going to want to live between if you make this change. And they chose to do that, and it worked.
Yeah.
Right? And now he gets to live the life that he wants with a lot more time and energy devoted to his family rather than just making a really big number. I think if a lot of people just looked at balance sheets, they would say like he's not as successful anymore. But on the public side, he actually gets, there's actually pensions still available on the public side for a lot of, government type roles. And so he's actually going to be just fine.
Yeah. I mean, I could think of 2 clients for me that come to mind where, and I'd be curious with your client. I'm sure there's other stories, but I think a lot of people think it's going to be just a quick rip the Band-Aid off and tomorrow I'm retired or tomorrow I jump into that. And for both examples that I could think of that come to mind for me, this was a 6 to 12, even for one, like a 3-year process where we were looking at it sequentially saying, hey, is this still the goal? Great. Right. And every time we met together, it was like, okay, let's just take the next step.
Yeah.
Whether it was like drop down in hours, or for one client, it was like, I'm going to keep my job, but I'm going to go back to school for this. And then once I graduate, then I'm going to get an apprenticeship. And okay, this is what we're going to do with the portfolio. And for another one, it was like the end goal is to spend more time with the family. And it was like, okay, we're going to back off your full-time job to part-time, and then you're going to become a consultant. And it was just, again, sequential. There were steps to it. Every single time we'd get together, it's like, hey, are we still working towards this?
I've seen that more than once. I fully agree. And the coolest thing that you're describing, when someone has that, I really want to shift from corporate life to something else, if it's something else that's totally different that they've never really done, I love it when they can find ways to test drive it.
Yep. Oh.
Like, go talk to people who've already done it, shadow someone, take a 1 month. If a lot of corporations now offer sabbaticals, like on your sabbatical, go dive into that role to see if you like it. Like use it as a chance to just go play. And the same thing when people are shifting to retirement in general, it's just looking at like, what's the purpose of your life? So much of our purpose is actually held in the work that we do, especially in the culture of the United States. So to leave it, you see the period, which could be a whole different episode, that the average person goes through of leaving their job and coming out of the other side of retiring. They think it's going to be like, gold watches and like working on their handicap, but they go do it for a number of days and it's not as fulfilling as they want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've been talking so much about the transition into like semi-retirement, so to speak. But if you're on the other end of, when I think I'm at the end of my rope, I really want to retire. That idea of mini retirement, the sabbatical, the test drive is so helpful, right? Because I'm sure we could fill up a couple episodes worth of stories from clients who a week later, a month later, 3 months later came back and said, Scott, I'm bored, or I don't know what to do next. I've done all the golf that I could do in the last, 2 months and I don't want to touch a club again, or I thought it would be different. And so it's like, how do you start to engineer or program what you're going to do, who you're going to be while you're still working? And the idea of a mini retirement and test driving it, like that's it right there.
Absolutely. And mini retirements are something that we're seeing more and more of for people who are maybe a little further away from retirement.
In their late 30s, early 40s, that break, right?
Which is really like, if your corporation does allow sabbaticals, take it.
Right.
Go take that time off, go do things that really matter to you. Some people, if they don't have mini sabbaticals, will use it as they're jumping the ladder from, one of the ways to grow income in any industry is not to stay in your corporation, but to go from corporation to corporation, right? And so in between, you might go do some sabbatical time to
set the start
yourself.
date for your new job a little further out. Like you should be able to have that leverage.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are really like the four things we see. And the other one's just that what you touched on briefly, but that concept of like entrepreneurship or like consulting. So we have a few clients who are very much so setting themselves up to do that. They're in roles in corporations where they have skill sets that lend itself well to the next work that they want to be doing, but it's a little tangential. So they've gone and gotten certificates, or they've gone to get more schooling while they're still in corporate life, so that when they leave, they can go do the next thing that they want to do.
Yeah, and I look at that one as like, it's not, as we mentioned earlier, as scary as like the startup, right? This is just leveraging your experience on your own terms now.
Yes. So. Yes. If you hate what you do, it's more challenging.
Yeah, but but it is a shift, right? You know, right?
Still possible, just harder.
We like to ask the question, like, what are you retiring to? Right? Because oftentimes the clients that retire away from something, that's going to greet them on the other side of retirement. They may not know it yet, but a week in, a month into retirement, they haven't done that inner work and they're not retiring into something. Well, they may be disappointed.
Yes. I mean, I think, as we're kind of thinking about the things for shifting toward that mindset shift, you just pointed out what we're retiring to. And I think that's, in a sense, more important than what you are retiring from. Because from is running away from something. You're just going to run into the same problems you have if you're not paying attention. But then on the other side, like the people who get to a point where, you can retire early. So corporate life, it's interesting what happens, because I've also had this happen for clients too. We get to a point, and actually I'm thinking of one specific client who's been at one specific large corporation for years, and she keeps moving her retirement year, like 5 years into the future.
Yeah.
every year. So we just keep adding a year, right?
Yep.
But what happens is we've been financially free for a while.
Mhm.
Once you're financially free, the way you operate and move through a business is different. You no longer care if you get fired to the same level that you did before when you had maybe a bit of a scarcity mindset about money, right? So what typically happens is people grow faster, do more, speak out more loudly, and oftentimes go through the ranks of a corporate life faster once they are financially free or have a work optional mentality. If you want to have that mentality and you're far from retirement, build up a taxable investment account with an emergency fund that has a couple of years worth of funding for you.
Yeah. And I
Because
feel like
the
this will
moment
be
you have that, you're like, I don't care if you fire me.
well, you're playing a
tell you
different
the
game
truth.
now. You're playing a different game, where you're just like, exactly, I don't care if you fire me. You're walking in with no weight on your shoulders because behind the scenes, the ace in the hole, so to speak, for playing poker is like, they don't realize that like financially you could retire. You come in with an entirely different mindset, which I love. And oftentimes the inhibitions, it allows you to think differently, be more creative, shoot from the hip, so to speak. And to your point, you may actually end up climbing the ladder faster when you no longer have that waiting over you of like, I have to grind out another year or 2 years. Now, I will say, and this will probably be a segment for another podcast, but when you're getting closer to retirement, I would say like keep that to yourself, right? If you're still a little bit of ways away, so we don't have that lame duck period, because I've actually sat with retirees that said, hey, I announced my retirement to my superior and my transition plan too soon. And now I'm just kind of like wandering about the office and no one asks for my input anymore because they know I'm leaving.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, make sure you're ready to go before you say that. I agree. But it's just, it's more so a mindset.
Correct. Yeah. I'm talking more on the tactical
Nick, you can
side.
go be harsh with me as my boss, and I can basically go right back to you and be like, you can't treat me that way.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Where in the old days, I might have let you slide because I was worried about how they're going to be, or you have an idea that really isn't a bright idea, and I'm willing to challenge you on that idea.
Oh, I'm going to dig my heels in.
That's when the real growth happens. Yeah, but I'm with you. Okay, so planning framework for this, because this is I'm realizing how long we're getting, because you and I can chat about anything. Really think through, do I want to leave corporate life and retire early? If you do, what of those 4 scenarios do you want to try? Once you know those scenarios, look at those indicators we looked at, like income and what are the change in benefits, and is it going to change how much I get to save, and all those various things, and then run the numbers and stress test different scenarios of how's it going to turn out, and plan for that healthcare coverage. And just kind of make sure you understand everything.
Yeah, and we've run a number of episodes. Happy to link to it in the show notes, but it just becomes a math equation at that point, right? Find the gap, as Scott alluded to earlier, right? What's your new income going to be? What are your expenses? If there's a gap, where are you going to pull it from? But again, test drive that first. Allow that to be your framework, and then dive out from there.
Yes. So, but I think the key is like, I hope you take this, and if you love the work you're doing, awesome. Keep building so work is optional, so you can keep challenging at work and growing and doing those things. If you don't like the work that you're doing at work, but it's the corporation, go find a one that you like. Everyone has their pluses and minuses, of course, but make sure it's a good boss that you love and people who support you, and just keep going. And yeah, man, I think it's a good conversation today, because I think this is something that we run into all the time with clients. And it's really, we're saying like the math is the math and it's easy. It might not be easy for you. It's easy for us because it's our day job, but it's really blending the emotional of like, do I make the change? Do I not make the change? Is it okay for me to make the change, with the math to make sure it's those two things together? That's where the power comes from.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is there's always an option. There's always a solution. We're never as stuck or as trapped as we think we are. And it's just an invitation to begin to explore that, to open up if we are feeling stuck.
Yep. All right. Well, until next time, we appreciate you guys. Talk to you later.
Take care. See ya.